Welcome to Chapter 3. This chapter we will discuss emerging business ethics issues. Make sure that you take detailed notes, as a lot of the details that are part of this chapter will be in assignments, quizzes, as well as exams. Let's begin. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to define ethical issues in the context of organizational ethics. Examine these issues as they relate to the basic values of honesty, fairness, and integrity. Delineate misuse of company resources, abusive and intimidating behavior, lying, conflicts of interest, corporate intelligence, discrimination, bribery, fraud, sexual harassment, intellectual property rights, insider trading, and privacy as all being business ethics issues. Another objective would be to the examination of how you can challenge determining an ethical issue in business. You should be able to deem what is an ethical issue as it relates to business. I will discuss further on this because ethics is not just defined in business, but what is interesting is that a lot of people in business do not see certain issues as being ethical or unethical, which is a huge challenge in itself. Ethical awareness. We make decisions that are ethical or unethical whenever we find components in a particular issue or situation that we deem to be ethical or unethical, right? So our failure to acknowledge or be aware of these issues can be very hazardous to an organization. The issues involve a group, a problem, or an opportunity that requires great introspection and investigation before a decision can be made. It should have those two elements before a decision is made. We should not just have a reactionary knee-jerk reaction, but it should be one where we are introspective and we do some investigation. Here are some values that are the foundations to identifying ethical issues. Our integrity, our honesty, and our fairness. And let me go back really quick so I can do some underlying points with that. Honesty is our telling the truth, right? Being transparent. Our integrity is doing what we say we're going to do, being a man and woman of our word. Our fairness is that we're treating everyone the same accordingly. We're not doing something different for a different group of people or type of people or based on any kind of preferential treatment, but it's fair. Punishment is fair. Reward is fair. Those are some issues that we must always consider. There are these other issues that a lot of people don't consider as being ethical or unethical. Something that is very unethical is the misuse of company time and resources. Time theft. The theft of time is huge. The time that you spend on social media, on your phone, reading a book, taking a nap, taking an extended lunch is theft of time. Using any company resources for your personal use is ethical and is unethical, and it's a misuse of their resources. Abuse or intimidating behavior, whether it's physical threats, verbal threats, false accusations, profanity, insults, wage theft, bullying, all of this are things that you need to strongly look at, not just in others, but in yourself. Your disgust of someone's use of profanity directed towards you should then not be placed at a higher standard, and then your use of profanity, whether it's blatantly or indirectly used towards others, you should not then be dismissive of that and say, well, And so it shouldn't apply to you, but it does. Um, False accusations, any kind of insult, no matter what degree of the insult, those all are abusive and can be intimidating. And those are issues that should always be considered. So we have lying, and we have different types of lying. You can have lying by commission as well as omission. You can joke without malice. They're all lies. And it can be unethical based on the context of the statement and its intent to distort the truth. The intent on pulling a person so far into this fable, into this lie. How far are you trying to mislead with the statement that you're making? The deeper you go in the distortion of that truth, the more of an ethics issue you have on your hand. It's one thing to say that you're joking around and you say that, oh yeah, I won this contest for eating 5 cheeseburgers. Okay. There's another thing where you turn around and you say that you were given a bonus because you had an affair with your boss, or one of your coworkers gave you a neck massage, and from that, and then all of a sudden you come to find out, no, that's not what happened, right? But look how far you distorted the truth. Those types of things are huge red flags. Something else that people overlook time and time again are your conflicts of interest. And when you have to choose between your own interest and those of the organization or another group, taking in consideration whether you see it as a bonus or not, if you work for an organization that has any kind of relationship with or may have influence upon another organization that you serve on the board of, or that you own stock in, or that it's your family's business, or a family member works for that company, anything that could potentially cause a conflict is something that needs to always be brought forward. And because you can cause a huge economic impact on the organization, but also on yourself or the company that you work for. So these are things that need to always be addressed. And for the most part, organizations, especially when you are taking on executive roles, or if you're taking on a board position, they ask you to list any conflicts of interest that you could potentially have. And from there, they'll decide whether or not the influence is great or minimal. Here's one that I think is pretty much should be clear cut, but what we realize is that a lot of people do not understand the types of bribery. We have both active and passive bribery. And the active is something that you clearly know that there's money being exchanged because you are to do something in particular. It's very, the intent is clear. And passive bribery could be where you just turn your head, or it's a case where it's so layered that you think that it's just you doing a hookup. You're just, hey, okay, you just need my vote for this. All right. It's more of a passive. There's some legalities of felicitation payments that differ from country to country. And so you have to be mindful of that. The chapter 3 goes into greater detail about that. Corporate intelligence. There's, and matter of fact, there's potentially an assignment tied to the act of bribery that you'll have to do some discerning of your own to really see how they can get to the best of us. You can actually find out that you've been involved in passive bribery and did not realize it. All right. Corporate intelligence, where you collect and analyze information that have something to do with the external environment of your business. Your external environment would have something to do with your competitors, with vendors, with the government, with other stakeholders. It's not internal. It's not your employees and your sometimes your investors are considered internal. Sometimes they're considered external, but the external environment. And you can use this information, and there's different models that can be implemented. You can have passive monitoring systems so that you can have early warning detection of how the external environment is about to impact your organization. You can have tactical field support and support that's dedicated to a top management strategy that is really focused on making sure that that long-term strategic plan that has been implemented can actually be fulfilled. So there's different types of models that are out there that you can actually implement. Discrimination. Here's a big one. It's illegal in the U.S. We cannot discriminate against a person based on the color of their skin, their religion, their race, their sex, their marital status, if they are receiving public assistance, if they're disabled, based on their age, whether they're young or they're old, their national origin, and if whether or not they're a veteran. We cannot discriminate. Oddly enough, this is a huge factor throughout our country because people are doing it. And so we have some states that are, the top 10 for age discrimination, where they're discriminating against employees and applicants who are 50 and older. It's happening. We discriminate against people because we find out they're married or they have children. And oh gosh, can't hire you because you're going to be asking for time off, right? Look what we're going through now with transgender. We have a president who wants to ban transgender soldiers and personnel. It's illegal in the United States to do that. Interesting. Religion. We're having an anti-Muslim crusade going through our country. It's illegal to discriminate based on religion. It's just absolutely obvious that this course, that this concept, that this principle is missing from every household, every school. This should be taught not just in college, but this should be taught as early as 4th grade. Okay? So that we can really embed in, as a culture, an overarching culture, the need to make sure that we're dealing with the foundational principles of integrity, honesty, and fairness. And when we have all three of those, we then have fewer instances of these kind of ethical issues, not just in business, but in general. Sexual harassment, another one. Once again, unwanted sexual approaches. When there's repeated remarks with the implied suggestion that the person that we're talking about, that their employment status or that is being targeted or that there's some kind of favorable treatment depends on a positive response or possibly even cooperation. It's disturbing because it's 2017 and it's happening at an alarming rate in which most men and women don't even realize that they're involved in sexual harassment. They don't realize that the comments they make, the jokes they share, the emails they forward, that all of it is harassment in a sexual nature. Something else that is falls under that is there we go, is dual relationships, where you cause direct or indirect conflicts of interest in professional judgment. That can definitely take place, and you can read more about that in the chapter. We have different types of fraud: accounting fraud, marketing fraud, and then of course there's the categories where you can have false or misleading advertisements. There's the implied falsity, puffery, or something that's just literally just false. Labeling issues, and of course ambiguous statements. And this happens a lot in marketing, advertising efforts. But also when you look at accounting fraud, the changing numbers, puffing numbers up to make them look, where a company looks more profitable, or reducing them to make at times to be better themselves in a different position. Everything is used to mislead, and so that's fraud. We have different types of consumer fraud, and shoplifting, collusion or duplicity, guile. Those are all forms of consumer fraud. A lot of times people think of consumer fraud, they're thinking of the consumer being taken advantage by the company, but this is where the consumer is involved in fraudulent activities. We have financial misconduct. Most of us have read about, been involved with, worked for some of the companies where you had a huge reform of Wall Street, and that was part of Dodd-Frank. And then we had the Consumer Protection Act that was passed to help increase accountability and transparency in that industry, and also to help protect consumers from deceptive financial practices and from financial predators, making sure that you're actually helping to empower individual consumers to not be lured into predatory practices and predatory organizations that are there just to abuse them and to mislead them. And so that ability to help protect consumers is very valuable. Interesting enough, you do have the agency that is there to help protect us is actually being attacked, which is quite interesting. We have different types of consumer fraud. I shared some, but here's friendly fraud, where you make a big purchase with a credit card and then you file a fraud claim with the card company. And then this usually happens, you get your package in the mail, you file a claim that you never received the package. It's fraud. Price arbitrage is substituting a different priced item, but it's a similar item for a higher return. So, for instance, Daniel placed a 1 terabyte hard drive into the box for a 20 terabyte drive and returned it for a full refund, as though he had purchased the 20 terabyte drive. Return fraud is where you replace an item with something different and you return it for a full refund. Joe filled a PlayStation box with rocks, resealed it, received a full refund when the store clerk failed to check the merchandise. Wardrobing is when you wear an expensive item once for an event and then return it for a full refund. Women have been known for this. That's the reason why you're having more and more clothing stores, especially ones that have expensive items, have a policy that if the item's been worn, clearly worn, they will not return. They will not accept will not do a refund. If the tag is removed, they won't do a refund. And some just have a no return policy at all, just because it's been such a prevalent issue. Returning stolen goods. This is when you receive a full refund on goods that were stolen. So you stole clothes, you return it to the retailer for a refund. It's consumer fraud. Some other ethical issues. Insider trading. We have illegal and legal types of insider trading. Our girl Martha Stewart, that's why she went to prison. Basically having the information from a trusted source who was not supposed to reveal that information, and you then turn around and either purchase or sell stock, or your share of an investment before a drop or before a spike, right? You hurry up and either get in or you get out before a major impact. That's insider trading. It's not fair to the whole market because the entire market is not aware of what's going on. And so you've now either dodged a bullet or seized, the gravy train based on information that was not shared with the rest of the public or the rest of the investors, kind of thing. So there's that. IP rights, intellectual property rights. This is where there's a legal protection of music, books, movies, and other written and auditory and visual forms of work. It is huge because consumers don't realize the value of the work because they didn't do it. And until you create something and someone steals it and uses it freely, that's the only time you then want to scream at the top of your lungs. But imagine if how artists feel when you're illegally downloading their music or you're buying bootleg copies of their music or bootlegs of their movies. What a lot of people assume is that, they make all these millions and millions of dollars. Well, what they don't realize is that when it comes to the artist, for the most part, you're making money off of royalties, and those royalties are only calculated based on sales. So if there's no sales transacting through, right? There's no transactions, then the labels, the distributors aren't then issuing payment to that artist. That's their bread and butter. That's that longevity that they can sustain. That's how they have the income that consistently comes in every month, every quarter, that's what they're banking on. And you take that from them. That's the reason why you end up finding a lot of artists that crash and burn, figuratively, in a sense that their career just tanks. And then you wonder why they go bankrupt, they have all these other issues. Well, it's because they're not making the money that you think they're making. Back in the day, in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, they were getting large advances on money, but what people don't realize is that money that's advanced is like a loan. It's not theirs free and clear. It's an advance. I'm giving you this in advance, and then the money that we make on the back end will then cover that advance. Right? But if we don't make enough, then you constantly owe money to that label for the work. So when you illegally take product that you did not pay for from the direct source, this is huge. That's the reason why, interesting enough, people have found out that with Tyler Perry, people have been buying bootleg Tyler Perry movies and then realizing that a lot of times the advance copies that people are getting their access to or they're recording actually have little glitches in it, and you're not getting the full version. And Tyler Perry's figured out a way to work that magic. It's huge, and until you create something and you put it for sale, and someone steals from you, until that happens, you just won't understand how big of an ethics issue this truly is. It's very difficult to have something you work so hard for and people just, casually take it. So the FCO, which is the Federal Copyright Office, helped to lay the groundwork for IP rules so that the various industries that and contributors to IP can be on the same page as to what it entails, what's the expectations, what are the consequences, so on and so forth. Privacy issues. Your company monitoring your technology and how you use the technology. Some employees feel that it's a violation of your privacy. Some companies say it's our equipment, you're on our premises. We have the right to see what you're doing, what you're not doing, and how you're spending your time, because why? One of our biggest issues is theft of time and misuse of resources. We have consumer privacy issues that we take into consideration. How much of our personal information is being shared and sold? There's dimensions to that privacy. As I just said, our awareness of what information is being collected on us, and also the lack of our control over what is being collected. Sometimes, especially with us using social media, and we allow an app to access our phone, we don't realize, and we have no assurance as to what content is being accessed, being used, being sold. You don't know if your contact list, you don't know if the stored card information, identity information, you have no clue what's being collected. So we have different determinants in business when we consider these issues, and we have stakeholder concerns about events and activities or results of decisions that we make. We have various discussions that have been generated by mass media and special interest groups as well as individuals. And then, of course, we ask other people in business about their opinion on the ethical components of an organization. And then our societal values as a whole. We can come from different backgrounds, but there are certain core values that we all possess no matter where we're from or how we were raised. And so we use those values as well to help guide us. So when you read chapter 3, make sure that you really consider and you look through the lens of all the stakeholders, right? You're looking through the lens of the company, its employees, its investors. You're looking through the lens of the consumer, the government, the competitors. You're looking at the lens, if you're a man, you're looking through the lens of a woman. If you're a woman, you're looking through the lens of a man. You're considering those of different races and religions, and you have to constantly look through different lenses. You cannot just look through one lens. And that is what ethics is all about. That's the only way to have a sense of integrity, to be honest and transparent, to be fair, is you have to be willing to look through and consider all the lenses. So with that, that is the end of chapter 3. If you have any questions, please email me. Thank you.